This isn't a teaser for a post-apocalyptic movie. This is Illinois, in the year 2025, where neighborhoods have turned into tent cities, people drift like shadows, and even the police don't dare step in after dark. In the once bustling areas of Chicago or Springfield, you will no longer see the bright lights of urban life or hear the bustling sounds of traffic. Instead, there are patched tarps, waste scattered everywhere, and the desperate atmosphere of a society fracturing from within. This is not simply a homelessness crisis. This is a brutal chain reaction of a crumbling system. Losing homes, losing jobs, losing the right to live decently, and ultimately losing one's place in society. In this video, we will step beyond the shiny facade of Illinois together to uncover a dark truth buried in the shadows right in the heart of America. This video is not intended to place blame on any individual or organization. It is based on publicly available information and aims to shed light on a complex issue with honesty and empathy. If you're ready to see what lies beneath the surface, let's begin. Illinois was once the industrial heart of America, a place where hard-working individuals could buy homes, raise families, and believe in a better future. The neighborhoods bustling with children's laughter, the factories ablaze with activity, and the close-knit communities were once the pride of an entire generation. But within just a few years, that scene has vanished. Instead, there are tents, dark street corners, and people forgotten right on the very land that once promised them dreams. As night falls on the streets of Illinois, tents increasingly appear more densely each night. So many that it's hard to distinguish between the sidewalk and the shelter of lives with nowhere else to go. In just the span from 2024 to 2025, the number of homeless people in the state of Illinois increased from 11,947 to 25,832. A staggering jump of 116% in less than a year, 12 months. Behind those numbers lies a social earthquake quietly spreading, with its epicenter being Chicago, a city once considered the pride of the American working class. In Chicago, the homeless population has tripled in just 1 year, with over 18,836 people. Temporary camps have sprung up along the Chicago River, beneath overpasses, around bus stops, and even right in front of government buildings. A painful reminder that the American dream has left their residents abandoned in the heart of the city. But this is not just a city issue. The suburban areas of Cook County are also witnessing a concerning increase in homelessness. Part of the reason comes from the wave of new migrants seeking a safer life in America, only to be pushed into a situation with no place to stay. When the affordable housing system is stretched to its limits, each newcomer means a new tent, a new corner of the sidewalk being occupied, and another life falling into the desperate doom loop. The number 25,832 homeless people is not just data. It is 25,832 stories. Some people worked hard for many years but lost their jobs after the pandemic and then got stuck in prolonged hiring freezes. There are veterans returning from the battlefield with souls full of wounds, but never receiving the care they deserve. There are young families, 2 children huddled asleep in the back seat of an old car, while the parents take turns staying awake all night to guard their fragile safety in the dark. When looking at them, we can no longer say, they are a different world. Because the boundary between them and us sometimes is just a medical bill, a month of unemployment, or an unexpected accident. The reality is, they are us, except today, they have no place to go back to. And with cracks quietly forming deep within our society, who can truly say they won't be the next to end up there tomorrow? The homelessness crisis in Illinois is no longer a social phenomenon. It is a vivid, frightening, and very real manifestation of an America that is questioning itself. Is America still a place where hard-working people are promised a decent life? And if the American dream is shattering right on the sidewalk, what do we have left to believe in for the next generation? When a society loses the ability to protect its most vulnerable, what will replace the law? In the tent camps that have sprung up throughout Chicago and the Cook suburbs, where streetlights are sparse and the welfare system is overwhelmed, a survival economy is quietly taking shape. There are no contracts, no labor standards, no insurance or pensions. Only silent agreements are made between those who have lost almost everything: jobs, housing, and sometimes even the right to choose. In Chicago, you don't have to venture far to see young women standing on dimly lit sidewalks, quietly waiting for a way out. Sometimes it's as simple as stopping at a lonely intersection or just stepping outside your door. But today, much of the trade has moved online. With just a few clicks, you'll find countless websites openly advertising private services disguised as luxury massages or personalized experiences. Some even include price lists, booking calendars, and user reviews, just like you're booking a hotel room. Not only Chicago, but all other areas in the state of Illinois are also facing a reality that many other states are beginning to acknowledge. When there is no roof over one's head, people are also more likely to lose the last remnants of their dignity. In that context, a bill is being presented called the Safe Jobs for Sensitive Occupations Act. The goal of this law is to bring an industry that has been pushed into the legal shadows back into the regulated area, where workers can access health, welfare, and legal rights like any other labourer. The bill's sponsor, Representative Will Gazzardi, who represents Chicago, believes that consensual acts behind closed doors among adults should not be an area where the government intervenes. For him, the concern is not the behaviour itself, but the context that has forced thousands of people to choose such a means of survival, a context where poverty, racial discrimination, gender bias, and economic inequality accumulate in silence. Supporters of the bill believe that what needs to change is not the people struggling in the grey areas of society, but the way we perceive them. For them, the pain does not stem from the work they are forced to do, but from the prolonged silence of a system that has chosen criminalisation instead of protection. When a person is pushed out of the safety net of labour, they also lose the right to bodily safety, the right to say no when faced with coercion, and the right to healthcare when both their physical and mental well-being are harmed. Many of them do not need to be judged. They just need to be seen as human beings, no more, no less. But on the other side of the line, the concerns are not easily dismissed. A faction within the Republican Party believes that legalizing a form of survival could be a long slide for social morality, especially when the most vulnerable individuals are minors. The heart-wrenching statistics still remain. Many people were lured into that inescapable spiral from the age of 12 to 13. For them, normalizing something born from injustice is just another way to rationalize betrayal of those who need protection the most. And while the debates over the law continue to struggle in the Parliament, out there, where there are no seats and no lights, there are still thousands of people negotiating their survival hour by hour, day by day. No one really cares or stops to listen to what they still hold on to in the end, except for a belief in a slowly fading America. So, what about us, those who are reading, listening, witnessing? Do we really want a society that treats people without homes, without escape, and without the opportunity to start over in a certain way? If despair becomes the most common currency in society, is legitimizing a form of survival truly empowering, or just a sophisticated way to rationalize a failure that no one wants to acknowledge? In Illinois, there are neighborhoods where even law enforcement no longer dares to enter at night. Not because of a lack of personnel, but because they know, inside those makeshift areas, no laws are recognized. The tent camps stretch beneath the bridges, along the banks of the Chicago River, or behind the abandoned shopping malls, have become a separate world, where the systems of governance, welfare, and law stop outside those invisible boundaries. The police can drive by, but they won't stop unless there's an emergency, and even then, many in the field admit that they feel hesitant. No one knows what is happening deep inside those areas, where the tent camps are stacked like modern ruins, where shadows of people lurk behind tarpaulins, and the only sounds at night are the wind and indistinct whispers. The presence of law enforcement in these areas is no longer a given. According to data from civil rights organizations and local press, many neighborhoods in South and West Chicago currently have emergency response levels that are 2 to 3 times lower than those in wealthier areas. Although not officially announced, community activists call these invisible gaps on the city's legal map. Emergency calls from these areas often take longer to be responded to. The police understand that they not only face security risks, but also deeper complexities. People who are so accustomed to living in a reality that no longer believes in the number 911 or the presence of any system. A retired officer once shared, "When you step into a place where the law is not respected, you must also accept that you're stepping into a crack in society, where there is no power, no boundaries, nothing to protect yourself. It is no longer an ordinary dangerous neighborhood, but a moral and social abyss, where every structure once called order has shattered into pieces." Once the law ceases to step into a part of the city, it is not just the withdrawal of security forces, but the withdrawal of civic responsibility, community responsibility, and ultimately trust. How much longer can we continue living next to those nameless lands without being drawn into emotional paralysis? And if even the law stands aside, is there anything left to step in and bring hope? In a place that was once a symbol of the working class like Illinois, having a decent home was once seen as a natural reward for hard work. But today, what was once called affordable housing is gradually disappearing from the living lexicon of hundreds of thousands of people. Not necessarily because they are lazy or not trying, but because the system has changed, quietly yet decisively, leaving a huge gap that tents are gradually filling. Statistics from civil rights and social research organizations for 2023 through 2025 show that Illinois is lacking approximately 290,000 affordable and available housing units for extremely low-income renters. Meanwhile, 75% of these households are spending more than half of their monthly income just on rent, an unsustainable ratio if workers live on minimum wage or regular salaries. Investment in social housing projects is disproportionate, with many programs being cut or delayed, while real estate prices are driven up by investment funds and fierce market competition, worsening the situation. The once peaceful residential areas with white fences and small porches have now become places where luxury apartments are rising, while the old residents are being pushed further out to the suburbs, where it is still cheaper, but also means being far from hospitals, schools, jobs, and support networks. Many families, unable to afford the deposit or meet increasingly stringent credit requirements, have chosen to temporarily reside in cars, storage units, or tents as a form of makeshift living, without knowing when they might be able to stop being temporary. Not just losing a home, it's also losing faith. Because when a person works full-time but still cannot make ends meet, it is no longer a personal issue, but a sign that the system is operating in the wrong direction. A home, once considered the foundation of stability, family, and self-respect, has now become a privilege reserved for those who have not fallen out of step with the market. And those who have missed the rhythm are becoming more and more numerous. The story of affordable housing is not just about land prices. It is about the right to live decently. When there are no longer affordable homes, values such as safety, privacy, or hope for the future are gradually swept away with each unsealed rental contract. Can a society maintain its moral foundation when even the right to have a roof over one's head is being fully commodified? And if housing is no longer a right but a race, then who will be left behind, quietly and invisibly? A temporary roof, a bed with a canopy, and a lock, seemingly simple things, are becoming luxuries for tens of thousands of homeless people in Illinois. In the context of a skyrocketing homeless population, especially in Chicago and the surrounding suburbs, the shelter system, meaning temporary housing facilities, is stretched to the point where it can no longer provide assistance to anyone else. Many people come, stand in line, register, then leave into the night, because the place, once called the last safe haven, is now full. According to relief organizations in Chicago, many shelters currently only meet about 20 to 30% of the actual demand each night, with the rest being forced to return without being accepted or never returning again. Some places have become overcrowded. Beds are crammed together. There is no privacy or personal lockers. On-site staff are often insufficient to manage conflicts or protect personal belongings, turning a place once considered safe into the greatest source of anxiety. In fact, the fear no longer lies outside on the streets, but right within the places where people come to seek refuge. Especially, women and the elderly are the most vulnerable groups. Many people refuse to go to shelters not because they want to sleep on the streets, but because they would rather endure the cold than feel threatened in an uncontrolled environment. Some women have shared that they sleep with their shoes still on, clutching their backpacks and a small knife hidden under their pillow, just to feel they still have the ability to defend themselves. The shelter system in Illinois, originally designed for short-term responses, is now being stretched by a long-term chain reaction crisis. When affordable housing disappears, when subsidies fail to keep pace with inflation, and when the number of people falling out of the safety net increases faster than the economy can recover, no shelter can bear the burden. There is a sad truth. More and more Americans see having to spend the night at a shelter as an unavoidable point, as if it were a step in a slippery slope that society no longer intervenes in. Is there anyone who truly believes they will be helped when everything falls apart? And if even the refuge is no longer safe, what is happening to the very concept of humanity in the world we live in? Amid the noisy news about inflation, housing, and welfare crises, there are two groups of people often overlooked by the media lens: the elderly and children. They do not speak up much, do not protest strongly, and do not make policy decisions. Yet they are the ones suffering the most from a system that has lost its ability to protect those who need it the most. In Illinois, according to community organizations, the number of elderly people falling into homelessness is increasing at an alarming rate. Those who once had stable lives, paid taxes and raised children, now live in cars, on park benches, or crowd into shelters lacking beds and support staff. Many people carry illnesses, have lost their ability to work, no longer have relatives, and also lack the necessary documentation to access social assistance programs. Children have even less ability to speak up. In the past year, the number of homeless children in Illinois has increased by thousands. Many still attend school during the day, but sleep in cars, shelters, or even on benches at night. Some families have to be separated. Mothers go to women's shelters, while teenage sons have to sleep separately in the men's area, causing many children to live in fear, insecurity, and prolonged psychological distress. In a country that once prided itself on being the best place to begin and end a life, the quiet disappearance of the elderly and children from public spaces is a sad signal. If both the beginning and the end of life are no longer protected, then the middle, no matter how comfortable it may be, becomes meaningless. Can we call it civilization when a society no longer has a place for those who have contributed their whole lives, and those who have not yet grown up? And if the future lies in the hands of the next generation, what will be sown from these unstable and cold years? Amidst a barrage of bleak news about the widespread homelessness situation, about tents crowded under the snowy sky, about the elderly dozing off by the bus stop, and about children clutching books stepping out of makeshift camps, one can easily fall into a sense of despair. But the truth is, this situation is not destiny. It is not something that must happen. It is the result of choices, and it can also be changed by new choices. The history of America is not lacking in moments that seemed insurmountable. The Great Depression, the post-war period, the 2008 financial crisis. But each time, this nation has risen again. Not by miracle, but thanks to ordinary people who dared to speak up, dared to demand change, and dared not to accept the new normal if it meant indifference. Nowadays, we have more choices than ever before. The housing-first models, providing stable housing before imposing conditions, have shown remarkable effectiveness in several states such as Utah, Minnesota, and even in Canada. Community mental health support programs, small-scale shelter models, and especially initiatives led by local residents all show that when people are trusted, they will recover. When they have a roof over their heads, they will rise up. But that will only happen if we stop viewing homelessness as an urban landscape, an issue that exists from afar. We need to name the problem with honesty, but we must also look at it with the eyes of the belief that every society can be kinder if its people do not stop demanding it. None of us can solve the entire crisis, but each of us can do something. A letter to the local representative, a signature supporting the housing construction program, a small act of kindness each week, and above all, an attitude that does not accept that it's none of my business. Because the future, no matter how bleak, is still something we are creating together every day. If silence is complicity, then is it time for us to raise our voices? Not just to protest, but to rebuild an America we once believed in. And if our descendants were to ask about what is happening today, how would we respond? That we turned our backs, or that we stood up? We have just traversed a difficult journey, from the precarious tents of the homeless to the dark areas where even the law hesitates to tread. From children without proper beds to the elderly who once built America, now quietly sleeping under abandoned awnings. That is not just the story of Illinois, but a reflection of a spreading reality, where the cracks in the system are becoming more apparent and people are growing increasingly silent. But it is precisely in that darkness that we also see glimmers of light, of kindness, of community connection, and of the belief that everything can still change if we are brave enough to ask questions, patient enough not to turn away, and resolute enough not to remain silent. What do we want this country to be for the next generation? A place where people are forgotten right on the sidewalk? Or a society that knows how to listen, knows how to correct mistakes, and never loses its humanity? And if right now is the time when history is being rewritten, which chapter of that story would you want to stand in? If what you just watched touched you in any way, please leave your thoughts in the comments section. Don't forget to like, share, and subscribe so we can continue telling stories that not everyone is ready to hear, but everyone needs to know. Each share is an opportunity for one more person to understand, one more person to care, one more ray of hope for lives living in silence. This video does not aim to condemn any organization, individual, or political group. All the information presented is based on publicly available data, official reports, and field observations from multiple perspectives. The stories, images, and viewpoints presented are educational in nature, reflecting social realities to provoke constructive discussions, without inciting agitation, panic, or scapegoating. We do not encourage any illegal activities, normalize suffering, or turn human pain into entertainment. This is not a conclusion, but an invitation to reflect together, to engage in dialogue, and to preserve the remaining humanity within each of us.